At your keyboard, the agent asks before it runs anything. In a pipeline, there's no one there to answer. So you don't approve. You pre-authorize. Welcome to the Atlas. You use the agent at your desk approving each step as it goes. This episode is about running it in your pipeline where no one's at the desk. You do the same careful review on every pull request by hand. It's slow, it's inconsistent, and it does not happen at 2 in the morning when the urgent fix lands. You want it automated. But the second you take yourself out of the loop, the thing that kept it safe, you clicking yes, is gone. At your keyboard, the agent asks before it runs a shell command or edits a file. In a pipeline, there is nothing to ask. The interactive shortcuts even go away. The documentation says it plainly. Those commands only work in interactive mode. Headless, you describe the task and pre-authorize the tools instead. So the whole permission decision moves earlier into the flags and into the workflow file. That is the spine of this entire topic. With no one to approve, you don't approve. You pre-authorize. So the first question isn't how do I run it? It's what is it allowed to do when no one is watching? Before any flag, place your job on a line. On one end, you write almost nothing, and Anthropic does the work. On the other, you script the agent like any command line tool and control every detail. 3 surfaces sit along that line. Surface 1 is the managed service. A fleet of agents reviews your pull requests on Anthropic's own infrastructure and posts the findings. You barely configure anything. Surface 2 runs the agent in your own runners, triggered from a pull request or an issue. 1 workflow file. Medium control. Surface 3 is the raw headless command. You pipe data in, get structured output back, and wire it into any build step you want. And here's the fact that ties them together. The managed action is built on top of the same engine the headless command exposes. 1 engine, 3 amounts of plumbing. So you're not picking a tool. You're picking a point on a line, how much plumbing you'll write against how much control you need. The headless command is the foundation everything else is built on. It's the agent with the screen turned off, behaving like any other command line tool. It reads from a pipe, and it writes to a pipe. Add the print flag to any run, and it goes non-interactive. For pipelines, add bear mode. Bear mode skips auto-discovery of hooks, skills, plugins, connected servers, and your project memory file, so a teammate's local setup can't change the result. You get the same output on every machine, and only the flags you pass explicitly take effect. In fact, bear mode is set to become the default for the print flag in a future release. Because it reads standard input, you pipe data straight in and redirect the answer out, exactly like a Unix tool. The classic move, pipe a build login, ask for the root cause, write it to a file. Or wrap it in a build script as a project linter, pipe the diff against main, and ask it to report typos. One boundary worth knowing, piped input is capped. For anything large, write it to a file and point the prompt at the path instead of piping it. Here is the center of the whole topic. With no human to approve, what the agent may do is decided entirely up front. Get this wrong, and the run that was supposed to help quietly does something you would never have clicked yes to. The first flag is allowed tools. It lets the tools you list run without prompting. That's the grant. But read this carefully. It does not restrict the available set. Every other tool is still callable. If you want to actually limit which tools exist, that's a different flag, the tools flag. For a whole session baseline, set a permission mode instead of listing tools one by one. Don't ask mode denies anything that isn't in your allow rules or the read-only set. That's your lockdown pipeline baseline. Accept edits mode lets it write files and auto-approves the common file system commands, but other shell commands and network calls still need an allow rule, or the run aborts when one is attempted. And the rules are precise. A rule like bash, git diff, space, star matches any git diff command. But the space before the star matters, or it would also match git diff index. So the single most common mistake is reading aloud tools as a lock. It's the opposite. It opens a door without asking. The lock is don't ask, plus an explicit allow list. The surface most teams reach for first lives in one file. Drop it in your workflows folder, mention the agent in a pull request, and it runs in your own runners. And in 2026, the way you write that file changed. The quick setup is one command, install GitHub app. As a repository admin, it installs the app and stores your API key as a secret. The minimal file pins the version 1 action, reads the key from that secret, and responds to mentions. The action now auto-detects whether to answer a mention or run straight from a prompt. Here's what changed at version 1. You move from the beta tag to version 1. You delete the old mode setting. It's auto-detected now. The old direct prompt input becomes just prompt. And every command line option, turns, model, system prompt, allowed tools, moves into one args pass-through. That pass-through is the bridge. Every flag from the headless command flows straight through it, so everything you just learned about permission and output works here too. The action isn't a separate thing to learn, it's the headless command with a trigger bolted on. And it's not only mentions, pointed at a schedule, and it runs on a timer, a nightly job that summarizes yesterday's commits, no human in sight. A pipeline can't read prose. It needs 3 things from the run: a parsable result, the cost, and a clear pass or fail. All 3 are built in. First, output. The output format flag gives you 3 shapes, plain text by default. JSON for a structured result with a session ID and metadata, and a streaming JSON form for live logs. Pull any field out with a JQ parser. Second, cost. The JSON payload carries a total cost field and a per model breakdown, so a script track spend per run without opening a dashboard. Third, exit status, because that's how the pipeline knows. A failed run exits non-zero, so the step fails. Hit the max turns limit, and it exits with an error. Pipe in more than the cap, and it exits non-zero. In accept edits mode, attempt something unallowed, and the run aborts. One honest note, there is no publish table mapping every exit code to a meaning, so don't invent one. Gate on the documented behaviors and on a non-zero exit, and you can bound the run before it starts. The max turns flag caps iterations and errors at the cap, so a job can't loop forever and run up a surprise bill. Pair it with a workflow timeout. Now the part with the sharpest edges. You've handed an autonomous agent the keys to your repository, and there's no one watching it run. The certification tests this harder than anything else. 5 rules. 1. The key is a secret. It belongs in your repository secrets, referenced from the workflow, never pasted into the file, and never exposed in the run log, which is public on public repositories. 2. Only users with write access can trigger the action. Bots are blocked by default. 3. The agent gets a short-lived token scoped to just that one repository, with no cross-repo reach. For cloud providers, prefer OIDC. Federation over static keys, because those credentials are temporary and rotate themselves. 4. By default, it does not open a pull request on its own. It commits to a branch and hands you a link, so a human still owns the merge. 5. Treat untrusted input as hostile. An outside contributor can hide instructions in a comment, so the action sanitizes that input, and you do not check out an untrusted branch into the workspace root. None of this is exotic. It's least privilege, applied to an agent, the same discipline you'd give any deploy bot. 4 mistakes. Each looks like a working pipeline until the moment no one is watching turns it against you. This is what the certification tests, not whether you know the flags, whether you know the constraint behind them. Mistake 1. Reading aloud tools as a lock. It grants without asking. It does not restrict. To actually limit the toolset, use the tools flag or a deny rule. Mistake 2. The key in the workflow file. It belongs in a secret. In the file, it leaks into Git history and into a log that's public on public repositories. Mistake 3. No bound on the run. With no turn limit and no timeout, an agent can loop and run up a bill before anyone notices. The max turns flag caps it, and errors at the cap. Mistake 4. Inventing exit codes. The documentation publishes specific behaviors, not a full table. Get your step on a non-zero exit, and on the behaviors that are actually documented, not on a number you assumed. Every one of these is the no one watching contract biting. A wrong assumption doesn't get a second chance. It just runs. Pull it together. Putting the agent in your pipeline is choosing a surface, then honoring one contract. 3 surfaces. The managed reviewer, when you want zero plumbing and Anthropic runs it. The official action, when you want it in your runners, firing on a mention or a schedule. The headless command, when you want to pipe a diff in and get structured output back. And under every one, the same contract, You pre-authorize what it may do, you bound the cost with a turn limit and a timeout, you keep the key a secret, and a human still owns the merge. The review you started with, the careful pass you did by hand on every pull request, is now a job that runs itself, in the surface that fits, under a contract you can trust. That's how you let the agent work while you sleep, and still believe what you wake up to. 5 things to carry with you. 1. In a pipeline, there's no one to approve, so you pre-authorize. 2. There are 3 surfaces, from the managed reviewer to the raw headless command. 3. Allowed tools grants without asking, but does not restrict, and don't ask mode as your lockdown baseline. 4. The action runs on a mention, with every flag flowing through the args pass-through. 5. The key stays a secret, only write access triggers it, and a human always owns the merge. There's no one to say yes. So you say it in advance, carefully, once. Thank you for watching The Atlas. If this episode helped, subscribe. There are more in this series on the way. Next up, hooks, the code that fires automatically on every tool call so your guardrails run even when you're not the one clicking yes.